Coming up on this episode of DL Weekly, Mickey's Mix Magic premiered, Lunar New Year is coming.
An office in the Haunted Mansion? We talk about park wait times and more. DL Weekly starts now.
Welcome to DL Weekly, a podcast about Walt's original Magic Kingdom, Disneyland. We cover the latest news and information from the resort, test our skills at trivia, and have a discussion about the parks every week. We invite you to send in your feedback and stories. Our contact information can be found at DLWeekly.net. Now sit back, keep your hands and arms inside the podcast, and enjoy this week's show.
Hello and welcome to this episode of DL Weekly for the week of January 23rd, 2019. I'm Teresa Urban.
And I'm Teg Bushman. We'd like to send a shout out and a big thank you to all of our supporters on Patreon, including Amanda C. for joining at the cast member level. Your support helps make DL Weekly possible. Our patrons get some pretty nice perks like access to our Discord chat, live show recordings, some DL Weekly swag, and more. If you'd like to learn more, head on over to dlweekly.net/support.
We have launched another way for you to join in the conversation with the community. You can head over to dlweekly.net/forum to be taken to our new forums. The forums are free and open to everyone to chat about Disney parks all around the world. So head on over and make a quick post about yourself in the introductions forum and join in on the discussion.
Did you know that you can rate and review DL Weekly on iTunes every 6 months? If you haven't reviewed us recently, please do so as it helps get our ranking better and allows the community to grow.
If you need some help planning your next trip to the parks, remember to contact our friends over at Concierge. Mike and James work hard to make sure you and your family will have a magical time at the parks. Head on over to dlweekly.net to find a link to their website.
Now let's get to the news.
Last Friday, Mickey's Mix Magic premiered with fireworks as it fell in the Friday through Monday schedule that will include them. Tuesday through Thursdays will only have the projections and laser parts of the show. Reviews have been positive, and from what we have seen online, it looks like a good show. It will be nice to have a nighttime spectacular every night at Disneyland, even in the off-season.
Yeah, have you seen any of the videos of this?
I did. So I haven't watched the whole thing from start to finish yet, but I watched a video, I think that Mice Age had uploaded, and it was just kind of, it was the beginning, it was parts of it, I don't know, it was just kind of a little, I guess, remix of the mix. But I really liked it, and honestly, you know, last week we were talking about the new song that they kind of had created or whatever, that's like the song for this. I really liked it. I wasn't sure how I felt about it. It was what's the song called? Get Your Ears On?
Yeah.
Is it?
That's part of the song anyway.
Yeah.
Everybody get your ears on.
Yeah. It's that. Yeah, I'm going to call it the Get Your Ears On song. That might not be right. But I wasn't sure how I felt about it, just listening to it on its own. But seeing it, like, with the show, with the projections, with the fireworks, I really liked it. It's a really high energy feel to it. And it's just, you can't help but want to move. So I think obviously that's what they were going for. They want you to like be in a street dance party feeling. So I really enjoyed it. I think it would be better obviously in person because those projection shows are just kind of hard to get. It's kind of hard to capture in a recording, I guess would be a good way of saying it. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah.
What did you think?
I thought it looked pretty cool. I'll tell you, when they first announced it and we first reported on it, it sounded kind of boring. But they've done a really nice job integrating stuff that wasn't just projections. The lasers look really cool. Yeah. They do some special effects with the snow machines that kind of add a little more of a dimension as well. The music is dang catchy. Yeah. And I'll tell you, there's been a bunch of times this week that I've had it like in my head after watching little clips of it, and I'm just like, okay. Even the remixes, which we talked about a little bit in our Halloween spectacular commentary, that we didn't like remixes of stuff, but actually this one wasn't too bad, I thought. So I like it. I like that it's going to be something that's going to be happening every night, even in the off season. I am hoping that they keep it for when we're there in August, because I would like to experience this firsthand. I don't see why they wouldn't, but just
fingers crossed.
Yeah.
The only downfall for me is that it is only 10 minutes. I wish it was a longer show, but I will take what I can get.
Yeah. Well, over in California Adventure, the Lunar New Year kicks off this Friday. The celebration will run for 24 days and will feature the return of Mulan's Lunar New Year procession that will include the three little pigs who are rarely seen in the parks. There will also be meet and greets in the Paradise Garden Park with Mickey, Minnie, Mulan, Mushu, and Pluto. 4 marketplace booths will also be serving Asian-inspired dishes.
This festival seems so neat to me, and the thing that I really think is fun about this is not only is it celebrating, a different culture, but the fact that they bring out different characters for it too. And so it's just something else, a different part of it to be excited about. It's exciting because they've got food booths and they've got, different theming, but then you also get to meet like Mushu. I don't think I've ever seen Mushu in the park.
Have you seen the 3 little pigs anywhere?
No,
in the park?
I have. I've seen I've seen photos of the 3 little
That's
pigs
true.
in the park. I've not met them in the park, but I don't even think I've seen a photo of Mushu in the park. To me, that seems like a very rare character.
I remember seeing Mushu in the park at some point. It might have been for a Lunar New Year in the past.
Oh, sure.
But yeah, he's definitely not out often, that's for sure.
If you thought that one day wasn't long enough for Valentine's Day, apparently Disney agrees with you. The Valentine's Day celebration will begin on January 22nd. The Floral Mickey will get a makeover. There will be Minnie's Valentine's Day scavenger hunt experience available for $6.99. That includes a game board and stickers. And a classic afternoon tea will take place at Steakhouse 55 over in the Disneyland Hotel from February 8th through the 18th, themed to the holiday.
Yeah, I know. Was it last year that we were kind of reporting on this, that it seemed like they didn't do anything for Valentine's Day, and I feel like they've like totally flipped it for this year.
Well, I think since we're celebrating the 2 main mice this year, we're celebrating their relationship, we're celebrating them, and now we're celebrating their love for one another too for Valentine's Day. Plus, we also have the Disney date night this year in February. Right. That kind of heaps up, or kind of hypes up the Valentine's Day spirit, I guess.
Sure. You could book your food and wine festival events starting last week. The reservations include tasting seminars, cooking demonstrations, sweet sundaes, and the Dinner with the Disney Chefs event. If you're interested in learning more and booking your place for these events, follow the link in our show notes at dlweekly.net. Would you be interested in any of these things? I think the Dinner with the Disney Chefs.
I would love to do all of the things.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember last year I thought the perfect time to visit the park, there was an overlap weekend where it was the end of the Food and Wine Festival and it was the beginning of Pixar Fest. I almost said Pixar Pier Fest. But it was the end of one festival right into the beginning of the next. And I thought that would have been such a cool time to have visited the parks. We had a few listeners that visited during that kind of prime spot. But yeah, the Food and Wine Festival definitely would be something I would really enjoy. It's different, it's something different, and I think it's really interesting. We've been talking about this a lot. I mean, I'm sure maybe some of you are getting a little sick of the fact that we talk about food pretty frequently, but the chefs there have just been so creative. So I think it'd be really, really interesting to be able to sit down and kind of have a more intimate experience with them and learn more about what goes behind creating these dishes for the resort. Oh,
yeah, definitely. And I love the idea of like tasting seminars and cooking demonstrations.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times you're able to taste the stuff, so it's nice.
Well, Sammy L. was visiting the resort and was able to experience the newly reopened whitewater snacks in the Grand Californian Hotel. Sammy passed along that he thought the food and menu was amazing. A lot of the menu seemed made to order and was fresh.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. I thought that Sammy had contacted us in the chat and he had contacted us through Facebook. But so he had sent us a couple pictures of the menu and kind of the area. It looks really great. The menu looks like it has a lot of good stuff on there. They have some breakfast items. Yeah, so he sent us along the Whitewater Snacks lunch and dinner menu that has like a poke bowl as one of the options on there. He had some handcrafted sandwiches. There were some skewers, which if they're anything like the ones in Adventureland, they'll be amazing. They have some like nachos and hummus and cheese and stuff like that. And then also they had some burgers and brisket and waffles, pizzas, desserts, kids meals. So it looks really good. And the fact that it's all kind of made to order where, you kind of show up and they make it for you instead of it sitting there, I think is amazing. So Sammy, thank you for passing that along to us. And because I saw that in the Mice Chat article we have linked, they actually look like they were just there for like breakfast. So it wasn't, we didn't get to see that. But between that and Sammy, we got the full menu.
Perfect.
Well, back in November, we reported on the new dryers that were installed in California Adventure near Grizzly River Run. Well, this past week, the dryers have disappeared. Cast members have reported they will be coming back in a more permanent form in the future. Grizzly River Run is currently down for its annual winter refurbishment, so the dryers aren't being missed yet.
So I don't know if anybody's been keeping up with these things online. You know, we're Disney nerds here, so of course I like watching like any of the behind the scenes or like the little sneak peeks that some people will take behind what's going on, like the fences. And it's so interesting to me that the entire thing has been drained because they're doing like the regular track maintenance. So it just looks so different without water, obviously. But then also they have drained water in other parts of California Adventure too, because it's all kind of interconnected. So not only is the Grizzly River Run river dry, but the area that's kind of over by Pixar Pier, Pacific Wharf, is actually somehow intertwined with the river run. It sounds like it's actually kind of like a reservoir for the river run water.
Sure.
So that is also been drained. And so they're doing some what looks like much needed cleaning of that area too. It would just be so surreal to me to be walking over that bridge, going to the like Pixar Pier signs, and to look to your left and have that just be empty. I'm so used to there being, you know, the water and the pier feel over there.
Yeah, because
so
this wasn't even emptied when they emptied the lagoon to put in World of Color.
Yeah, so they must not be as connected, or maybe there's a way for them to kind of block it off so they don't have to empty out both. But yeah, it looks pretty like it needs a little extra TLC. We'll just put it that way. It's not looking as Disney perfect as one would hope, but it will be soon.
What do you think about the dryers disappearing?
So the dryers, I think they'll be back. You know, we've heard that the dryers will be back from cast members. I know I saw online that there's kind of some mixed feelings about the dryers in general. Some people were happy that they were gone. I don't know. I think they make sense. I think they'll be coming back, and hopefully maybe a little bit better theming. They were kind of, I don't want to say generic, but they didn't tie in with the area as well as they could. So I'm hoping that if they come back, they won't be quite as, I don't know, out of place looking.
I just think it's interesting that these things just showed up in November, and it's January, and they've already replaced them with something. Or possibly replacing them with something.
Well, it could be the same dryers, or they're just doing maybe they're getting a facade. Same exact unit, just with something slightly different on the outside. That's true. We'll have to see. Well, here's a little fun trivia for you. Did you know that the new Tropical Hideaway holds a nod to the Society of Explorers and Adventurers? Do you even know what that is? Well, it's a collection of fictional characters associated with the attractions around the world. It started in 2001 with the launch of Tokyo Disney Sea. The members are included at Hong Kong Disneyland, Walt Disney World, Disney Cruise Line, and now Disneyland. The new name at Disneyland in the Hideaway is Sea Falco. So who is that? Sea Falco is Camilla Falco, who is part of the backstory for the new Soarin' Fantastic Flight coming to Disney Sea. The new attraction will be their take on the Soarin' ride system.
This is interesting because I do remember at some point in my history of Disney parks that I remember hearing about the Society of Explorers and Adventurers, but I never read into it or thought about it. But it's interesting because they take characters that are in different attractions on the world and they mention them at other parks around the world. So it kind of all brings it in together. So there's a great article over at the Orange County Register that gives you some more in-depth information on all this. It is really interesting that Disneyland basically is having something that's related to Disney Sea. Now, the other thing that I thought was interesting, and I know this isn't Disneyland related, is the version that's coming to Disney Sea, this Soarin' Fantastic Flight, is going to have like a whole story to it, which to me seems a lot more themed than just kind of, soaring over the world, that kind of thing. So should be interesting.
So if you guys are wondering where this little hint is, it's something that if you've been there, it's kind of hard to miss. There's one of the walls, kind of towards the back, I'd say, of the area, has all of those different paddles and oars on it, and that's where you can find the different names on it, including the new one for Miss Sea Falco.
Yeah, very interesting. Well, Monorail Red has joined Monorail Blue with a wrap sporting Mickey Mouse for his 90th birthday celebration. The new wrap is mostly yellow with black and white Mickey faces on each car.
I think it's cute. I like it. It's simple, but I like it.
Yeah, no, I kind of like these. It does kind of take away the futuristic look of the monorail, in my opinion, but who cares? It's a Disney wrap. It looks nice.
It kind of does, but it's... I like how it's themed to what the rest of the resort is themed right now. So I think it's okay for that reason. Well, in a fun bit of news, do you want an office inside of the Haunted Mansion? Well, Donna Collins, wife of Michael Collins, gave her husband just that in less than 5 days.
So I sent this to you.
It's amazing.
So kind of tell everybody about what happened.
Yeah, so what it is so Donna and her husband, Michael, are both big, of course, maybe they're even listeners, big Disney fans. Mm-hmm. And basically, over the years, they had kind of accumulated different memorabilia, I guess you could say. And so while he was away, she decided to kind of theme his entire office to the Haunted Mansion. You guys, they have replicas of the stretching room portraits in here. They have, she even has tassels that she somehow got from the actual Haunted Mansion. It sounded like she, I don't know, had an inside connection, and a cast member was able to buy them from the cast member store because they were switching them out at the attraction. And I believe it was from Disneyland even.
Yeah.
But anyways, there's just all sorts of things. It's the wallpaper in there it's not the classic, purple wallpaper that we all associate with the Haunted Mansion. It's actually wallpaper that looks like the area when you first walk in. I'm going to call it the foyer, right before you go into the elevator into the stretching room. It's the wallpaper from that room. So anyway, she just did a phenomenal job with this. Yeah. And there's a big crystal chandelier in the middle. This guy is incredibly lucky because it's a good thing that this isn't my office. It is so detailed. I would be so distracted. I don't know if I'd be able to work.
Yeah. I saw this.
It's so well done, though.
And I was looking at it, and I was like, oh, man.
And she surprised him with it. He had no idea that she was doing this.
That would be amazing. What a wife.
Crazy.
Right?
Just awesome.
But I was thinking about this. I was like, man, it'd be so cool to have, our podcasting studio be like the Haunted Mansion. Because then, it wouldn't matter where we aimed a camera for live streams and stuff. It would be like we're in the Haunted Mansion. It's just so cool.
It's so neat.
It would
neat.
It would take a lot. But I like the she had some personalized things. There was a picture of her son that changes into a ghost. Mm-hmm. There was the wedding photo that was from their wedding that his head disappears off of.
Yep.
And there's a statue.
Yep. It was a headless photo. It was their wedding photo. So if you guys remember in the attic scene, they have all those kind of nods to brides and their husbands, but as you kind of pass by, the husbands' heads all seem to disappear.
Right.
So it was a nod to that. So she had their actual wedding photo. They had his head removed, so that's framed on his desk as well.
Yeah, it's just such a neat thing.
Very cool.
And what a lucky guy.
So creative too.
What a lucky guy. Well, now we take a trip to Trivia Land, where producer Vern is here this week to stump us with Disney trivia. He'll read us the question, we'll attempt to answer them, and then Vern will give us the correct answers at the end of the show. What do you have for us this week, Vern?
Hey guys, thanks for having me back. So, got 4 questions, and if you're feeling up to it, we'll have a bonus question at the end. For question number 1, Honey, I Shrunk the Audience, located in Tomorrowland, has which sponsor due to the 3D glasses used in the attraction?
That's a good one.
Ooh.
I feel like I should know this sponsor. It's probably like a sunglass company. Sunglass Hut. I'll say Sunglass Hut.
You're going to say Sunglass Hut? See, I had a different thought process. I thought it had something to do with it being film. So I was thinking Kodak.
Oh, maybe.
Because I feel like that's kind of the time period. And the more I'm thinking about it, the more I feel like that's what the little, deposit bin said.
Well, I guess we'll find out in a bit. All right.
Okay. So, the Watch Shop, or New Century Timepieces, was originally what kind of store?
The watch, is it on, you're talking about on Main Street?
On Main Street?
Yeah.
Okay. Was originally another type of store?
Yeah. New Century Timepieces, or the Watch Shop, was originally what kind of store?
Would it be cheating if we looked up to see where it's located on Main Street? I can't picture it
Oh, it's right next to the Carnation Cafe.
Oh, okay.
It's on the left.
Yeah, okay.
Think about the fact that it's Main Street and it's typical Americana. What type of little shop would you find on any small town America?
Well, there's a lot of...
A lot.
There's a lot.
I'm going to say a pharmacy.
Pharmacy?
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't think there was ever. Maybe there was a pharmacy. I don't know.
I'm just gonna say a jewelry
Jewelry store?
shop. Yeah.
That's an easy conversion.
'Cause I was
Jewelry
thinking-
store, watch store.
Yeah.
I was
You
thinking
got
of the
display
tobacco
cases.
shop, but that's on the other side.
That's where
That's
the
why I was like, wait, where are we talking about? But yeah, that's the opposite side.
yeah.
All right. What ride?
Vern's hard on us this week.
Yeah, right? That's why we only have him on every once in a
Yeah,
while.
right.
You get mad at me. What ride had a fire break out in it and then used the burnt wood and frames as part of the scenery?
Well,
I have to say Pirates.
I was going to say the only one I know of that had a fire on it was Pirates of the Caribbean.
Well, not that like had a fire, but like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride has that like.
Oh, fire scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you
but
saying Pirates as well?
I'm saying Pirates as well because that's very realistic. Mr. Toad's it's more of an effect. It doesn't look realistic, I guess
Sure.
would be a good way of saying it. Whereas, remember the story with Pirates, they had to figure out something differently because nobody realized that it was actually on
Yeah.
fire when it was on
Well,
fire.
the fire department showed up. Yeah. Okay.
They just thought it was part of the show. So they made it not as realistic looking afterwards.
All right.
Shortly after the inauguration of New Orleans Square, there was a penny arcade that opened. What was the name of this arcade?
Oh, because it was over kind of by where I don't think it was where Pieces of Eight is, but kind of over.
I don't even know where to start with this one.
Well, I'm gonna be real original.
The New Orleans Square Arcade.
No, not quite that original. I'm gonna say since that area has a Pirates theme, maybe it didn't always, but that's where like the Pieces of Eight is and like the Pirates of the Caribbean, I'd say gift shoppy thing
Sure.
is. And plus they have that fortune teller pirate guy
Yep.
over there. I'm gonna say it was the Pirate Arcade. Maybe it was like maybe Roger Arcade would be better. That's a little
So
more
you'll
clever.
say the part. Okay, so I'll say like Lafitte's Arcade because it's still that, but it's like Lafitte's Landing in.
Yeah.
So let's do that. All
okay,
right.
that's
we
way
need
more,
we need
that's
we
way better than my
sure.
Pirate Arcade.
We need maybe some coming back here. So maybe the bonus question
Can
will be
we have
easier.
An easy question, please?
It might be. It wasn't easy for me, but
Oh, no.
You two are far more knowledgeable of all things Disneyland than I am, so you probably already know this one.
That's
Maybe.
real reassuring.
Name the first female Imagineer.
Oh boy.
Mary Blair.
I was going to say Leota Toombs. I don't think it is, but that's the first one that popped in my mind.
All right. Well, stay tuned for the correct answers from Vern at the end of the show.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
So our next guest this week actually works for a service that some of you may have heard of before. He works for touringplants.com, and he's a statistician for them. So please welcome to the show, Fred.
Thank you for having me here. Great to be here.
Well, thanks, Fred. So my first question is, what is a statistician? And with touring plans, like, I guess, what does that mean for people who have no idea what that is?
Yeah, so one of the big problems that people have when they go to plan their Disney trips is what time of year to go. So we found when we were planning our own trips back in the early 2000s, this was one of the questions that we had. And so a couple of us that worked for the unofficial guide to Disneyland got together and said, I wonder if we could collect data that would help us track the ebbs and flows of crowds throughout the year. And so we started doing that. And what it basically turned into was this crowd calendar where we take the next 365 days of the year and we give you a 1 to 10 rating about how crowded it's going to be. So we use a lot of pretty advanced mathematical tools to come up with these predictions and convert it into the calendar. So that's basically how it got started, was the idea of this crowd calendar.
Well, very cool. So it sounds like you are a Disney fan yourself then. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, big Disney fan.
Perfect. So we like to ask all of our guests on the show kind of what your Disney story is. So kind of, how'd you get involved with the parks, or how you fell in love with Disney, the company? What's your Disney backstory?
Yeah. Okay. So yes, I've heard you go through these questions with other guests on the podcast, and it's great because I love talking about this stuff. But my story is kind of it's kind of a twofold story. I have like the little kid story, which was I was born in '74, and my parents took me to Disney, first to Walt Disney World Resort in Florida in like 1977, I think.
Okay.
And we had such a fun family trip that my dad actually planned another trip to go to Disneyland a few years later. And so I was a very little kid when we went. Like it was a long time ago. And I have these incredibly vivid memories, not only of that trip, but also of my parents describing that trip to like friends of the family when, in the years after that, when we'd have like a house party or something.
Sure.
Or friends or family would come over and, my dad's face would just light up as he told this story about how great this place was,
Cool.
So that always stuck with me. And then we never went back. Like for years and years, I didn't go back. And until I became an adult, I would say probably my mid-20s, I got really interested in the idea of going back. I had never been back. And so I started to, plan my own trip for me and my family. And that's when I discovered these books, the Unofficial Guide series, both to Disneyland and to Disney World. And so when I saw that they were using a real kind of science, a data science-driven approach to solving these travel problems, I reached out and I said, hey, like, I'm a statistician and I love Disney. What's involved and what do you need?
You're like, what can I do for you?
What can I do for you? Yeah, exactly. And my timing couldn't have been better because they were right in the middle of trying to solve this problem of, collecting data on wait times in the parks and then using it to help travelers solve these problems. So it's been basically, everything after that is history. So
awesome. Well, very cool.
That is very cool. So when you enter the park, which way do you go? When you go into Disneyland, you go down Main Street. Do you go left towards Adventureland? Do you go kind of left towards Frontierland? Do you go straight through to Fantasyland? Do you go towards Tomorrowland? Where do you go?
Wow, that's a good one. Now, if I'm going to be a good corporate player, I'd have to say that I'm going to go whichever way my touring plan tells me to go. So if I have a day planned with a certain set of attractions, one of the things that our software does is it'll tell you in which order to experience the attractions in order to minimize your wait in line.
That's amazing.
So yeah, it totally works. It's really amazing how well it works. So I would, of course, do that. But if you're saying just kind of, if I'm not really following a plan, I'm just there because I want to be there, I typically would go into Tomorrowland. But that's not
interesting.
Yeah, it's not really because, I love Tomorrowland, obviously, but it's almost because I think as Frontierland is kind of like my favorite land. And so I think that natural cycle to go around the park ends up with kind of saving my favorite to the end,
Sure.
So maybe that's what it is too. I don't know.
That's a really good way to look at it because I always go right towards Adventureland because I love Indiana Jones. And for me, in general, I would say everything on the west side of the park is more exciting to me. I think there's more stuff on the west side of the park than there is over in the Tomorrowland area. And I can wait for those things. So I think that I go right for my good thing, but you might have the best way about it though, because if you got to wait and then the anticipation builds. So maybe that's something to try in the future.
Sure.
Like
yeah. Mix it up. I like it.
So then are we going to, is your favorite attraction then Big Thunder Mountain, or what's your favorite attraction?
I actually really like Splash Mountain.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's such a well done attraction. I think when you look at all of the the Imagineers, when they have kind of their toolkit that they draw from to design these things, they have a bunch of different ways they can go. Right? They have the they have the water based rides like It's a Small World and Splash Mountain and others, and that's just I think a really cool way to design a vehicle system using the water. And of course, getting wet on a hot summer day, that's always fun.
Always bonus.
I think it's got the music, which I think is really catchy, even to this day. I mean, it's and nobody's seen the movie really, but everybody knows the songs, and so there's something to that. It's got that kind of romantic appeal because you remember hearing the songs when you were a kid and going through the attraction. The animatronics are great. There's lots to look at. There's lots
so
going
many.
on. Yeah. It has a lot of repeat, rideability. Like you can keep riding it and it's still fun and fresh.
That's true. I never thought of it that way, but you're right.
Yeah. And it's a long ride. It takes a long time to go through. There's several ups and downs. So every time I ride that, I think, it's Splash Mountain, but why do I have so much fun on this darn ride? It's amazing. I just always end that ride with a smile on my face. So I like Splash Mountain.
I think
That's
it's
awesome.
hard not to. So maybe you do this too. So when I'm riding Splash Mountain, I always am trying to figure out exactly where I am in the loop of things, since I know they kind
Okay.
of have everything stacked. It is so amazing to me how well they almost get you kind of turned around. So even if
yeah.
you're like mentally trying to figure out where you are, it's really difficult to do that. I think that is so cool.
Maybe that's part of it too. You kind of get lost in it.
You do.
You're not really thinking about it. Yeah, that's a good point.
What's amazing to me is I've looked at like blueprints of where the flume goes, and it's a lot longer than
Yeah.
I thought it was, because it's really actually a fairly narrow attraction that's very deep if you
Yeah.
look at it that way. And it feels like it's just in the little mountain, but
Yep,
it's not.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, that's what makes it such a long ride. There's lots of winding around and resetting for the hills and whatnot. And this is something I think that also comes from my work with kind of the data behind the Disney parks, because of course we have to develop these touring plans. We're tracking the ride time and the lines, how long the lines are, and even the walking time between attractions. All this stuff goes into it. So I remember being kind of surprised, like, wow, Splash Mountain, it's that long. Like it's compared to other rides, it's one of the longer rides there.
Wow. Yeah, I guess you guys would have to know that, because if you're trying to plan out somebody's day, you have to know how long not only the line is, but how long it takes to get there, how long it takes in the attraction.
to be on
Yeah,
it. Mhm.
for sure. Yeah.
So what is the longest attraction at the park?
Ooh, good question. What is the longest? Well, not counting shows, obviously. Shows would be the longest. The longest? I don't
I
have the
gotta
stats
think.
with me.
Is it Pirates?
Oh, yes. It would definitely be Pirates, I think. I'm trying to think. Pirates or Haunted Mansion, maybe, but probably Pirates.
Yeah, I think Pirates.
Yeah, I think Pirates would be the longest one. Yeah, good one.
Sorry, I just thought you had stats at your fingertips.
No, I have no memory for that
He's
stuff.
like, no.
That's what our computers are for.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
exactly. He's like,
Okay.
I've got tools for that.
Well, that's good. So going forward, I know not to ask you specific questions like that.
Well, you can. You just got to give him some time.
Sure.
Yeah, or I'll just get Teresa to answer. That's the best way to do it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you
I'll
go.
just randomly say something. Be like, oh, yeah, that's it. That's it.
Yeah. Well, she's had pretty good luck with being put on the spot with questions and stuff when it comes to the trivia,
Okay.
especially. But so kind of for listeners who may not be familiar, can you just kind of explain what Touring Plans is?
Okay, so Touring Plans is a subscription-based website. So you pay a small fee per year, and it gets you 12 months of access to all of our tools. We have, of course, complete coverage of the Disneyland parks, the Disneyland hotels, all the restaurants, all the attractions, all kind of the basic information that you need to know about the parks when you're planning your trip. And the key is it's for planning. It's not a fan site. We're not a news site. We're there for people that are planning their trips to the resort. So all of our tools are based on that. We like to direct people when first viewing our site to the crowd calendar, because we think that's kind of where people should start. So you need to pick what time of year you're going to visit the park. And so you can look at our crowd calendar to get a sense of how crowded it's going to be throughout the different times of the year. Also, the calendar indicates, major events that might be occurring, different, parties. All the major holidays are listed on there.
So like the grad nights and like the New Year's Eve.
Yeah,
and,
gay days. Yeah. Anything the dapper days, like special events and whatnot that might be happening that, although it might not really affect the wait times that you see in the park, it's going to, it could potentially affect kind of how crowded it feels, like actually the crowd density when you're walking through.
Gotcha.
So we start with that. And then once you've selected the days that you're going to visit, then we direct people to our touring plans, which is actually going through and selecting what attractions you want to experience when you're there. And so you basically go through and you select, we give you some information about, height restrictions and ratings and, who enjoys the attractions the most. We divide it up into different age categories and whatnot.
So you have Teresa as one of those options, huh? Who enjoys the attraction the most? Teresa.
Yeah, Teresa. Yeah, exactly. So you select your attractions, and then we'll actually go into our database of predicted wait times, and then we'll calculate an optimal plan for you that's going to minimize your wait in line. And a lot of the times, it gives you surprising results. Like it might tell you that it's actually worth your while to crisscross across the park for a particular attraction in order to save some time in line.
That's interesting because Teresa has actually Teresa and I have kind of been at odds about this because we were talking about this just a couple weeks ago.
I think that was last week.
Might have been last week.
Yeah.
She crisscrosses back and forth to get, because she sees a wait time or a fast pass comes up or something. And I'm the type of person that I'm like, well, by the time you walk over there and then like if you want to come back, like I just try to kind of go with the flow around the thing. I guess I'm a little less methodical, but she also usually goes for less days than I do. So
Right.
That's interesting, though, that you could save time crisscrossing, even though it seems like it's not.
It seems like a waste, yeah. But this is one thing that really surprised us when we started generating these back in the early 2000s, was that it recommended this. And we thought, that can't be right. So we went to the parks to test them out. And sure enough, with a little bit of extra walking, you can actually save a huge amount of time.
That's amazing that my scatterbrainness it saves me time in the long run. I just thought it was because
you're genius.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, so that brings up the next question that we talked about last week, which was, is it worth it to have a park hopper? Do you have some times with the touring, with the plans, that you can even hop parks, or do you kind of try to stay limited to one park?
We stay limited to one park. The park hopping is a really difficult, as it turns out, mathematical problem to solve because the number of attractions now becomes huge.
Right, yeah.
And so, all the different permutations of, going back between those two parks, it becomes too difficult to solve that problem. And plus we find most people are not willing to do that. We might be able to convince them to, go to Frontierland and then back to Tomorrowland and up to Fantasyland. But going over to, California Adventure to ride Soarin' and then coming back to Disneyland. Most people typically wouldn't do that, even if it was beneficial.
Well, the hard thing I would think with that is you've got, how long it takes for a certain group of people to walk just that distance. But then you also have to try and figure out what the wait's going to be at the turnstile.
There's that too.
Get out of the one park and then also to get in the other park.
Yeah, that's absolutely part of it. One way we handle that is we allow you to select your walking speed. So if you think you're going to be, like if you have a large family or young kids or some elderly people in your party, then you could say, look, I'm expecting that we're going to be a little bit slower. Or actually, you can select to minimize the backtracking. So you can say, you know what, we want to minimize our walking more than we want to minimize our wait in line. And so the plan will adjust that for you by minimizing the back and forth. So it's quite adjustable.
So if I'm understanding correctly, this is just all information that I could, or one of our listeners could just go to either your app or your website and we could input all this information and then it just spits out the perfect plan for us? Or do you sit down and do you guys have I don't want to say a guide, but like a person that they talk to and then the person figures out the plan for them?
Yeah, no, it's all do it yourself. You go in and you select what you want. And if you don't want to put in that much work, you can select like pre-selected plans.
Sure.
So, you're just, 2 adults without kids. So we have a plan for that. So you can say, just give me that plan and I'll follow it, But even then, the real power behind the plans is the optimize feature. So, the order that you're going to visit them to minimize your wait in line might depend on the day that you visit.
Sure.
Right? Because it depends who's there and how long the park hours, what's going on, if there are events there. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why you might want to adjust these. So the plans actually can change from day to day, depending on what's going on in the parks.
Interesting.
Now, one thing I've always been impressed with is, so I'm on your website right now and I'm looking at the subscription price, and I'm sure there's plenty of people going, oh man, it probably costs an arm and a leg for this. But I've always been impressed with this because I actually have gone to your site a few times and I've almost purchased it a couple times, but have not. But it's only $7.95 for Disneyland to get access to all this. And if you want to add Disney World, it's only $13.95.
And that's a year?
That's for a whole year.
Wow. You get your year access, yeah.
Holy cow.
Which I always thought was a good and honestly, I don't know why I've been so cheap and haven't spent this $8 or whatever to get it. Just even just to play with it would be worth it.
Oh, I can do it myself. I don't need that. But how convenient. The fact that I can just say, make my day, please maximize my time for me. Because that's always what everyone's goal, I would think, is to do. And you think you do a pretty decent job of it. But as Tag and I found out last week, our thought processes behind this are very different, and we both think that we're saving time by doing our, opposing things, but this has math behind it. So
yeah, and and you can always you can just make a free plan, a free or sign up for a free subscription as well, like just like a demo to try it out and see if you like it and see how it works. And then if you want to, it'll give you some limited access to the different tools, and then if you like it, you can pay the $8 to subscribe. So
yeah, I just thought this was such an interesting idea. So and I know you probably can't get too deep into it because there's probably some magic math and everything that goes into it, but how do you get the wait times from the park, and how do you calculate that, I guess?
Well, we get them from several different sources. So we have people in the parks ourselves that work for us that collect them. So I don't know if you know Guy.
That sounds like a great job.
I'll put you in touch with Guy for sure. Yeah, so we have people in the parks, not every day, but almost every day. And so one cool thing about the app that goes along with the subscription is that when any of our users are walking around the parks, they can submit the wait times that they observe.
Oh, sure.
So if you're walking by, Haunted Mansion and it says 25-minute wait, well, you can go to our app and say that it's currently a 25-minute wait for this ride. So we have our own people that do this, and then people that are subscribers will do this for us as well. And then, of course, Disney has their app, which does publish some wait times as well. We don't use this as much. We prefer to rely on the stuff that we collect ourselves. But that is another source of the wait time data that we've gathered over the years. So we have a few different sources. Even just like even Twitter, like people will post things on Twitter saying look at this line at this attraction, and we'll add that to our database. And there's many different ways that we can get the data. But we have about our total database, which includes Walt Disney World, Disneyland, and Universal Orlando. I think we're up to like 12 million wait times right now or something.
Wow.
It's incredible. Yeah, we have tons, and a lot of that is due to our subscribers who, provide it for us.
That is amazing that you guys, obviously all of this is built on data, so the more data you get, the more accurate things could be. And if you're paying for a year of service and you're there often, and you want to help contribute, obviously this would be something you'd want to do. So that's pretty awesome. I feel like we should get this and try to figure it out for our trip.
Sure.
And then we maybe we aren't going to be completely sticking to it because I know how I am, and I know probably Teresa might stick to it.
I'll stick to it.
But I'm more of a freewheeling kind of.
You just go wherever the wind takes you.
I do because I like to have that freedom.
Well, there's one thing for sure is that it does take away a little bit of the spontaneity. So you're missing that. It becomes like almost like we had one writer write in and say that it becomes like a military exercise, like step one, go here, do this, then step two, over here, do that, so it does.
I think people, especially if it's your first time visiting one of the Disney parks, that is probably one of the more overwhelming things is you get, if you get, there's a big buildup, you get into the gate and then it's like, well, where do I go now? What now? Where do I go? So I can see how it would be really beneficial and really helpful, even if people, maybe don't follow it 100%, but if it's at least a guideline for you, it's very helpful.
We've also talked quite often on this podcast about how ticket prices have gone up. And so I think that this would be great if you're trying to maximize your days. If you're trying to get on the most amount of things, you're trying to see the most amount of things, you're trying to, use your time the best. To me, it seems like it would be one of those situations where you're like, okay, I have enough money to go with me and my family for 2 days. How do I see the most stuff? And maybe it does feel really regimented, but if that's your goal is to see the most stuff, it's kind of what you're going to have to do.
And this is what we found is that when you ask people after their trip, what criteria they use to rate the success of their trip, they most often will say, how much did I get to see? And how long did I have to wait in line? So that's kind of these are the two problems that we're trying to solve.
One of the things that has been rumored a lot, and I feel like with the amount of data you guys have, this might be a great, resource to kind of get an answer on this, is since you guys have started tracking this, have the parks actually become consistently busier consistently over the year?
Definitely. Yes. That's clear in the data. In fact, I was just looking at this the other day. So every day, obviously, we look at, see what the wait times were the previous day and how they fit into our data structure and our models going forward, because we try to refresh our predictions for how long the waits are going to be every few weeks. And yeah, there's this steady increase. Like the distribution, I don't know if your listeners know much about the math behind it, but the distribution of wait time, so kind of the highest and the lowest, that seems to stay the same throughout the years, but the average wait time is going up and up every year. So it's kind of this moving target every year where things are just ever so slowly getting higher and higher and higher as the year goes on. And part of that is attendance increases. There are just there's more people are going, but it's also that the attractions are not keeping up with increased capacity or the parks. Right. Mm-hmm. So on the years when, like at California Adventure, when they added Loon Lands and added more rides, two things happen that allows for more processing of guests in the park. There's more to do, but the problem is that they're so popular is that the attendance goes way up too. So it's just really hard for Disney to keep up with the demand of the people coming. So, you see this, that's why you see this increase from year to year of the average wait time.
Which I think is just interesting because, nowadays a lot of times people are saying, there is no downtime anymore. It's always the on season. There's no off season really. And I remember when I had an annual pass in the early 2000s and I would go fairly frequently, like 3 or 4 times a year. And I remember it did feel like there was, seasons where it was busier or not as busy. And so it's interesting to me that it's gotten so busy. And part of me wonders, and we've talked about this a lot, and I don't know if your data shows anything that could go towards it, but why has it become so popular recently? It's been around 60 something years now. Why all of a sudden is it been this place that everybody goes to and that people are going, so frequently and so many at a time kind of a thing?
Wow, that's a really good question. I don't know if there's anything in the data that would indicate that. It would just be kind of a guess. I mean, travel is up in general. Domestic travel is up in general, so I think that's certainly part of it. Population is up, so there's just physically more people. More people means more people in the parks. I think the Disney brand is in the last decade is experiencing a really big spike. Specifically the movies. I think that, the acquisitions of Marvel and Star Wars and, what Pixar is doing, the brand is just getting bigger and more powerful and more widespread. So I think it's just really experiencing a boom in the last 10 years that I don't think we saw in, as much in the 80s and 90s.
So here's the question that's going to be on everybody's mind in this next year. With you guys with all the data, and I know it's hard to know because you don't have any data on this yet, but what do you think Galaxy's Edge is going to be like?
My recommendation is to line up now.
You're right. Yeah, just get in line now.
Just go. Bring a tent. Just bring a
right.
tent and just live there because it's going to be insane. Yeah. So for us, I mean, we actually do have a fair amount of data on what happens when something new opens.
Oh, because they would have had it for like Pandora and
Pandora is the latest example, but we also have not so much at Disneyland, I suppose. There hasn't been a major.
Yeah, they do. You guys do Universal too, is that right?
Universal, so we have all the Harry Potter.
They saw the boom of the Harry Potter Wizarding World.
Oh, big time. Yeah, for sure. And of course, Cars Land as well. That was a big.
Oh, yeah.
We have a lot of data from Cars Land, and Radiator Springs is still, I think, one of the most popular attractions over there. And so we do have some sense of what happens when something new opens. I mean, you don't need to be a data scientist to know that the first at least 3 to 6 months at Galaxy's Edge are going to be insane. I mean, it's going to be. It's going to be a real mess. I mean, unless you are the hardest of hardcore fans, I would recommend waiting until at least the fall, before going to check it out, because the lines are just going to be ridiculous. And there's actually a lot of the problem with predicting what's going to happen at Galaxy's Edge is the logistics of it. Is there going to be a separate entrance? Are they going to do hard ticket events for it? What are they going to do there? There's a lot of the logistics are unknown, so that's going to be interesting to see what happens there.
I'm interested to see what Disney does because Disney is very good at crowd control. I would say they're almost the best at crowd control. However, I feel, I mean, I guess they kind of learned a little bit with Pandora, because I feel like Pandora was kind of similar to this, where it was a whole new land with these big e-ticket attractions. However, Star Wars is like insanely popular, more than Avatar was, and it's in the back of the park, and Disneyland's not very big to begin with. I am wondering though if, because the Disneyland version is opening first, will there be kind of a drop off when the Disney World version opens? Because then there'll be two places you can go. Like Pandora, there's only the one place. Where Star Wars, you could like spread it out, and I don't think Disney necessarily made two of them just to make two of them. I think that they realized that because of the popularity, they had to build two of them, and they had to be identical to spread that.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think you're totally right. And I think the Pandora was kind of an experiment for that. The idea of making a new land. I mean, they had expanded Fantasyland a few years before that, and that was kind of a big, a big addition. And we saw what happened to the parks then. And then when Pandora opened, that really surprised us. That's one where we didn't really predict well how popular that was going to be and how long that popularity was going to last. I mean, it lasted like almost 18 months before we really saw a drop off in popularity there. I mean, even today, people are lining up, well before the park opens to go check that out. So I can't even imagine what Star Wars is going to be, because, I mean, I don't think anybody can make an argument that the Avatar movies have any kind of following like the Star Wars movies do, and especially in California.
So how long? So as someone who might have signed up for touring plans, how long does it take for you guys when like Star Wars, when Galaxy's Edge opens? How long before you guys have fairly accurate data that you can sort of correctly crowd forecast them and put it into an actual touring plan?
Yeah, it depends on the season. Now, I don't know if we have an official. Do we have an official date yet for Star Wars?
We haven't seen an official date, but people are pretty certain it's going to be June.
June, like late June, mid-June, something like that. Yeah. So by the end of the summer, we'll have a pretty good idea what it's going to look like. Now, it's going to be obviously, multiple hour waits for the attractions. And the land itself, I think, is going to be, it's going to be jam packed. But that's one great aspect of the app that we have. So when you build your touring plan, it'll show up on the app on your mobile phone when you're in the parks. And then depending on what is observed earlier in the day, you can re-optimize your plan while you're there. And so if something is going on or our forecasts are off that particular day, you can re-optimize based on the live situation in the parks, and it will kind of calculate the best way to get through the rest of your day. So even if our forecasts aren't totally perfect in the first few months, there's still a lot of value in being able to optimize your park, or optimize your plan while you're in the park.
Does that take your when it re-optimizes the day for you? Does that take into effect things like Splash Mountain, for instance, randomly breaks down and is closed for the rest of the day? Does it know that? I guess would be a good way of saying that. And so will it kind of readjust for you? Yeah,
it does. That's one of the reasons that we allow that. And in fact, we'll even give you a prediction of when we think it's going to come back online.
Oh, that's amazing.
Well, because you probably have all that data too.
Sure, it happens all the time.
Now, here's a really weird question. Can you predict when it's going to go down? Because somehow I have never been stuck on an attraction, and it's this weird bucket list thing for me.
And you want to.
I want to, yes.
So she needs to sign up for touring plans, and part of the touring plan is she wants to hit every attraction when it's going to break down.
Okay, when is Indy going to break down? Okay.
That's fantastic. That's a new request. I've not heard that one yet.
Everyone's probably like, this girl just needs to stop complaining. She's got the best luck. She's never gotten stuck on an attraction.
Teresa, for Space Mountain. Yeah. If they could determine when Space Mountain was going to break down, I'd be there.
So cool.
I can't believe you haven't been on it when it broke down. I mean, it happens so often. Not so much in land, but... Yeah.
So many times. Well, and this last time that we were there, I was using the Disneyland app to check wait times, because I wasn't smart enough and I didn't go to touringplans.com and use your service. And just watching Indiana Jones, how many times a day that would go down. I was like, with how frequently this goes down, how do I never seem to be like, the odds are kind of in your favor to be stuck on it, and I'm never stuck, but I shouldn't really complain about that.
No. You're the only person that complains about that.
Yeah, I probably am.
Oh, maybe it's the kind of thing where when it happens once, you'll be done. It's like, okay, I don't want to
I'll
have
be
to
like,
go through that
never
again.
mind. Yeah, never. I'm going to be that person that's stuck on it for hours, and that's my whole day is being stuck on the one attraction or something.
So, with all the data you have and all the times you've worked on all this, this is the type of stuff that I'm interested in. So, what is something that would be really surprising to the average Disneyland guest that your data has kind of shown or proven?
There's a few things that come to mind. One of my favorites was, and this was years ago, and it doesn't happen much anymore. But we had a lot of examples when we were first collecting data where on slower days of the year, it was actually a less of a wait time to get a fast pass than to get in the standby line. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this, where where it's listed like a 45-minute wait, but the fast pass return window is only 35 minutes from now.
Yep.
So this happened. I think we looked at this, and it was like something like 7% of the time this happened. And I remember thinking, wow, people just don't really understand how FastPass works. They think you have to pay for it, or they just don't know it's there, or for whatever reason. That was something that popped up that I don't think anybody had really ever, looked at before.
Interesting.
Another thing that happened when we started doing this, which surprised us, is that kind of as a joke, when we first designed this software, we were making our own touring plans to see what the optimizer was going to say. Mm-hmm. And we said, well, let's just pick everything. Let's just throw everything in there and see, see what happens. Assuming, of course, that it was going to crash. But it didn't. It actually created a touring plan which included every single attraction and show in the park in a single day. And we said, no, there's no way. It's not possible.
Wow.
How could you do everything? So, of course, we had to go test it, right? so we did.
Man, your job is so rough.
It's a tough life. So it's called the Ultimate Disneyland Touring Plan. And you can do this. You can actually go and you can say, you know what, I want to do everything in the park on a given day, and I want to see if I can do it. So it is possible to actually do everything in the park. That was something that we didn't think would be possible.
That's interesting.
Now, what is that challenge that you sent me, Tag? There is some challenge out there to do everything.
We've talked about it on the podcast.
It's in every attraction in Disneyland and every attraction in California Adventure. And if something is down for the day, something's down for refurbishment or the ride just goes down, you're disqualified. You have to ride every single thing. And all I thought was, strict. How on earth can you do this full, do absolutely everything? People have done it, but it's a grind to me.
It's a grind, and it's not fun, because what happens is that you're so concerned about getting through all the attractions that even when you're riding them, you're not enjoying it. You're planning your next 3 or 4 steps.
Yep. For sure.
It's like a game of chess or something. So,
well, the thing that I just can't wrap my head around is, how is absolutely everything going to be? I've never been to the park where something wasn't being refurbished or something.
That's really rare.
How on earth?
It'd have to be on a day which is very busy, which means it's that much more difficult to actually complete it because it's too busy. So it's kind of.
Well, there was one guy that we saw that he did it, and part of the rules for this thing is you literally have to, on Twitter, take a picture of yourself on the attraction, and that's how they validate that you've done it, because they geolocate you and timestamp it and all that stuff. And the monorail had gone down, and that was the one thing he needed to get, and they weren't sure if it was going to be up anymore. And then he got it right towards the end of the day. He got it, and I was like, "Oh,
nice!
That is crazy." When Chris was on, he said that there was a lot of interesting things that sound a little shady to me. That Disney will manipulate their wait times to get crowds to flow in different directions and stuff. Can you talk a little bit about that, or do you know anything about that?
Oh yeah, that's something. So when we collect the wait times, I'm really talking about what we call the posted wait times. Mm-hmm. So either there's a cast member outside the ride with a sign, or there's a digital sign or a manual sign posted at the attraction. So that's the posted wait time. But then the actual amount of time that you're going to wait in line is something else. It's usually less than that. Mm-hmm. And Disney does this for several reasons. One is they want to give themselves a bit of a buffer in case something goes wrong, or maybe there's a an unusual number of wheelchairs that have to be loaded in or
Well,
unloaded
it's
or
just like
something.
when you go to a restaurant and the host tells you, "Oh, it's going to be 20
Right,
minutes for a
yep.
table," and when they get you a table in 10, you're really happy.
Well, exactly. So customer experience is another reason why they might do this. But the third reason is that, and we particularly find this at the end of the day, they want to discourage you from getting in line, right? So if there's say that they're expecting there's going to be a mechanical problem that's going to put the ride down for a short amount of time, they might jack up the wait time to try to discourage you from getting in line, and therefore encourage you to come back later. Well, if you're coming back later, you're more likely to have a meal, go shopping, experience something else, and you're going to extend your day at the park. So there's that manipulating. I mean, I guess it's kind of manipulating, but I don't necessarily see it as manipulating in a bad way. I think it's a way to improve your experience. I'd rather they post 45 minutes and I only wait 30. I think that's actually a good thing.
Well, the nice thing too is, I mean, think of 30 minutes versus 45 minutes. That extra 15 minutes feels like an eternity, especially when you're in a queue and the line is not moving at all. There's several attractions I can think of that the wait time probably isn't actually that bad, but it just feels like it's forever. So I would rather walk by and see 45 minutes and kind of be on the fence of it and then feel good about my actual wait than be stuck there for even longer.
Yeah.
But
That's yeah, for sure. This becomes a bit of a problem for us on the mathematical side of things, though, because we have to convert all of these posted times into what we think the actual time is going to be, and it's complex. Like, it depends on the time of day. It depends on what attraction you're talking about. Some attractions, the posted time is a lot more accurate, if you want to say that. On others, the ratio of the posted to actual is expanded because either it's more susceptible to breaking down, or so there's a bunch of factors that go into predicting the difference between the posted time and the actual time you're going to wait.
So when there's an attraction that does not have Fast Pass, and then Fast Pass is added, how does that affect the wait time in your data?
Oh, well, the standby time is going to go way up because now you're reserving some of the capacity of the ride for Fast Pass guests. And so, this has a big impact. And we've seen this through several attractions that have done exactly that, right? That they historically didn't have Fast Pass, and then they've added it, or maybe they even add it seasonally. There's some attractions that only have Fast Pass on a seasonal basis.
Yep.
And so, it becomes a basic capacity problem where you're trying to get 2 queues flowed into the ride as opposed to one, and it has a big impact on the wait time for the standby people.
Do you think that, in your opinion, because I don't know if data can prove this or anything, in your opinion, do you think Fast Pass is a good thing for guests or a bad thing for guests?
For guests, I can't see any way that it would be considered a bad thing for guests. No, I think it's a good thing for guests. I think any way that you can distribute people around the parks better is a good thing for guests. It puts more onus on the guest to understand how the system works. That's certainly the case. I mean, we talked about this little glitch where people don't know that the Fast Pass is there, and they could actually don't have to wait in line. So there is some responsibility on the part of the guest to understand how it works. But no, I think it's actually it kind of revolutionized the theme park experience when it first began, as a way to distribute people more evenly throughout the park, and that's definitely a good thing.
That's interesting. I've never thought of it that way, but that makes sense. It does kind of force people to spread out a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because if you have your Fast Pass, say for Space Mountain, and you're over near Splash Mountain at the time, you're not going to take the time to ride every single attraction on your way back over to Space Mountain. You're just going to go to Space, you're just going to beeline right back over to Space Mountain. So that makes sense. So I actually have kind of a Fast Pass question. I know we were talking about it a little bit before the show, but I was just mind boggled a couple weeks ago. We were reporting on the news, and I believe it was New Year's Eve, the Fast Pass return line for Indiana Jones was backed up almost all the way into New Orleans Square, which that just was such a mind boggle to me, because I assumed which, sometimes you shouldn't do. But I assume that with the fast passes that Disney kind of controlled that, I guess would be a good way of saying it. Obviously, you can't control the standby line. People are going to wait, whether you say it's a 4-minute wait or a 4-hour wait. People, might choose to stand there. But distributing fast passes, I figured if it was busier, or whatever, I figured they kind of adjusted for that. So maybe this was just kind of a weird coincidence, or I don't know. So it kind of made me think more about the fast pass system. So do you guys know how that works exactly?
Yeah, that's kind of odd. I agree. That would be really strange to see a long, long line like that out the fast pass queue. Like, it kind of makes me wonder if there might have been something mechanical or logistical going on in the queue. Like
something
maybe
something else was happening.
something else was going on where I don't know. Maybe who knows? People crossing lines and the cast members are trying to redistribute people, or something wrong with one of the switchbacks. It's like they clip the rope in the wrong spot and it caused a big bottleneck or something. I mean, I don't know. There's lots of different because really you shouldn't have that kind of a bottleneck. However, I will say that all bets are off on New Year's Eve. In fact, that period between December 27th till about January 2nd is by far the busiest time of the year every year. And it's not just the busiest time. It's, like we have our 1 to 10 scale. It really is a 15 on the scale. Like there's no number that describes how busy the parks get on that week. And it's actually interesting. I was at Disneyland a couple years ago, and there was this family behind us in line at like 6:30 in the morning trying to get into the park. And, we were there because we were, doing our quote unquote research. And we said to them, like, just curious, why in God's name would you come to the resort at a time when everybody else is here? It's so busy.
Right. Yeah.
And they basically, matter of factly said, if I'm going to take off work and the kids are not going to miss school, this is the only time
That's true.
of the year we can do it. And so it's just kind of the fact is that, it's the busiest time of year for a reason. That's when people are off. So I think it'll always be the busiest time of the year.
So with the fast passes then, am I right in assuming that Disney does kind of control that? So if say it's a busier day and so they know that there's going to be more people, do they change maybe how many fast passes they distribute each hour? Do they make it bigger, make it less, or is it just always constant?
No, it's constant. And so what happens is that there's a set number of fast passes that there's a rate, basically. So a rate of fast passes. So for every fast pass that is distributed, the internal clock kind of ticks ahead 1 second or a group of seconds or something. And so that what happens on the busier days is that clock just ticks ahead faster because more people are getting the fast passes. So the rate at which that internal clock ticks ahead is something that we measure when we're trying to predict what the fast pass return times are going to be, because of course we have to do that as well for our touring plan.
Does your data, I know Disney doesn't release attendance figures. Does your data kind of give you insight into how many people are going to the parks on a daily or yearly basis?
I really wish it did. I would love to know the actual attendance numbers on a daily basis, but no, we don't. And that's the one time, like Disney is aware of us, and we tell them when we're going to be in the parks doing our research, and we kind of have a mutual understanding. But that's the one time that we did get in trouble when we tried to start counting people in the parks.
Could you imagine? I couldn't imagine trying to count the people in the park.
Oh no, we had this poor girl, Kelsey, just started working for us, and we sent her for this, and right away Disney security was like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And so we've all doing this work. We've all had our run-ins with Disney security, but and it always works itself out. But yeah, they don't want us counting people, and we totally understand why. So we stopped trying to do that. But it's kind of an impossible task anyway. I mean, how could you really, count the number of people?
You'd have to have one person standing at each turnstile right behind that cast member's back, I feel, to then...
Well, then you'd also have to get all the people who are leaving, and
that's the problem too, right?
That's true.
You can get an incoming count, but how do you... Yeah, so there's all kinds of...
Plus all the people coming on and off the monorail.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nightmare, so... Yeah, no, we don't have any attendance figures. We do, we look at it an aggregate, but we don't have any daily figures.
That's just really interesting to me because I know that there are, oh geez, who is it? Somebody puts out like attendance figures every year and they guesstimate, Disney stuff, in the millions or whatever. And it's just interesting to me. I mean, I guess I understand why Disney doesn't want to release that information because if they have, a down year or something, everybody will panic and, sell your Disney stock. And
that's right.
Yeah. Not like that at all, people. So you said that so you guys have had some run-ins with security. What about what you're doing in the parks kind of makes you stand out as someone who's doing this?
Single guy with a clipboard and a notepad with no kids, walking around the park and not riding anything.
with
just
a neon sign over his head.
Just doing laps around the park. It tends to stick out. My favorite story is my boss, Len Testa. He and I started the site together. Mm-hmm. It was shortly after 9/11, and he was flying to Disney World to do this research, and he was by himself, no family, and he had a bunch of aerial photos of the parks in his carry-on luggage. Oh, and of course, this was like a huge red flag. What? Why are you walking with this? So he was like, he got put in the back room for like an hour and interviewed by these people. Geez. Until he finally said, look, here's the book. My name's in the book. You can call my boss. Like, he'll explain.
Yeah.
So
it was fine. But exactly. Go to the website. Check it out. That's my name. This is what we do. So it ended up being fine. But yeah, it's a little suspicious when you see, someone walking around the parks and because we used to collect the stuff ourselves just by hand, right? Before we had our app, we'd just walk around and with a notepad, we'd be writing down the wait times, and that was kind of a dead giveaway.
So how do you, back in that day, so you're writing down like the posted wait times, and then are there times where back in the day you would like get in the line and start a timer and go through and then compare it, or?
Yeah, we did that. We do that now on the app. You can do that. You can time your own wait in line and submit that when it's done. So that feeds into our database. We also, God love our volunteers, but we had them do we call that like an actual wait time exercise. And unfortunately, the best way to do that is to actually ride it continuously. So we go to something like Indiana Jones or Space Mountain, and they'd get there first thing in the morning, and they would just ride it over and over all day.
Oh man!
Timing, comparing the posted time, watching it go up throughout the day, and then comparing their actual time.
I don't know. I feel like depending on the attraction, that wouldn't be too bad of a gig.
Splash Mountain.
But I can see but I can see how you would after you've ridden, let's say, California or the Incredicoaster, like I could see how like after 3 or 4 times of doing that, your body's like, okay, it's been shoveled around enough today.
Well, you could be stuck on going on It's a Small World over and over and over.
Well,
see, I don't mind It's a Small World.
But I don't think I could listen to that song the entire day. I couldn't.
That's when you put your earbuds in and listen to DL Weekly.
You're wearing noise-canceling headphones. Yeah, that wouldn't look weird at all.
Yeah, no joke. We've had people do exactly that. They get their earbuds and they listen to podcasts, while they're in line. Yeah.
Oh, jeez. I totally believe it. That's funny.
So, but it's with all. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's really valuable data because it's rare for us to have those pairs of data, right, where we have the posted time and the actual time, side by side. So it's really valuable data for us.
Well, and then back to back to back, so then you can see if it
that's right. Yeah.
varies throughout the day too. Yeah.
So, other than like opening and probably closing, is there like a lull sometime during the day that like is a good time to hit up stuff, or does it really just depend and is totally random?
No, it's not random. There's some pretty predictable dips throughout the day. The first one would be think of something like Big Thunder Mountain, where they've got multiple trains that they can run.
Sure.
But starting the day, they probably don't have all of them running. They might have, say, two out of the 4 I think they have there.
Sure.
So what happens is there's a time in the middle of the morning, usually around an hour and a half after opening, when the crowd starts to pick up and they'll add another train. At that point, you'll see the wait time dip down because now they have more capacity per hour, right? So that's the first dip. Then when you get to, and then things tend to climb pretty steadily till you get to about the 2 p.m. hour. And then you can, depending on the attraction, you can see some dips around the parade time if there's a daytime parade.
Yep.
That draws a lot of people away from the attractions. So that's a good time to hop in line.
That was my favorite time to hit up anything on the west side of the park is when Phantasmic is going, because nobody is in any of those attractions when that's going on.
It's true, yeah. And then there's another very small dip around mealtime in the evening. So 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 6:30, somewhere in there, you'll see people get drawn into the restaurants, and that'll open up some of the wait times.
Now, did you also say that Touring Plans does like restaurant stuff as part of your plan as well? We don't do anything in terms of predicting your wait at a restaurant, but you can certainly add restaurants visits to your plan.
Sure.
And of course, everybody does that, and even you can add in breaks and meal breaks, or even time away from the park. If you know that you want to, go to downtown Disney for lunch or something, you can add that to your plan, and then it'll pick up when you get back. And so, yeah.
I just didn't know if you had data showing like, the best time to eat lunch at Rancho Zocalo is this time or whatever, because it seems like something you kind of could track, I suppose. We did. We tracked that for a while, hoping to find some advantage, and we just couldn't find one. It was basically steady every day. I mean, it's basically you just you have to go before the rush. So the best time to eat lunch is when it right when it opens, when nobody wants to eat lunch. So yeah. Now I guess this question. So this is just kind of a silly question, but has your touring plans, when you've got let's say on a particular day you have a bunch of your customers in the park using your touring plans. Mm-hmm. Have you seen that make a difference on the wait times and how things move around the park? Because everybody's got this plan of this is the best time to go on this and that, which causes the opposite of what you're trying to do.
That would be super. That would be a really cool experiment.
Wouldn't that be weird? Yeah, I mean it's certainly theoretically possible that you could get to the point where some kind of critical mass where so many people are using the plan that it messes up the plan, We've prepared ourselves for that day, but it hasn't come yet. So
interesting. Yeah,
we actually have what would you call it? It's a piece of code in our plan that tracks how many people are going to a particular attraction at a particular day. And so we actually we add a slight increment to the wait time if we know that someone else is going to that attraction at that time. But as it stands now, even though we have hundreds of thousands of subscribers, it's nowhere near enough to have an impact on the crowd flow.
That's crazy.
So that day's far ahead, but maybe one day, you never know.
I don't know. I just find it fascinating because, like you said, if everybody goes according to plan, then the plan becomes the problem.
That's when you use that button that he told us about that kind of reconfigures it.
Reoptimize.
Reoptimize. That was it.
One thing that can happen though is that we've heard stories of large tour groups that are using our plans together. So a group of like 100, students or something will all follow the plan, and you'll hear them in the park, and they'll be, okay, everybody, now we're at step 6, go over to Haunted Mansion and get in line. So now all of a sudden there's a group of 100 and whatever people going in, so that can actually add several minutes to the wait time at a particular attraction.
I'm sure. Wow.
Yeah.
I just find it's just amazing to me that you guys collect all this data and give it to people to be able to use to make their vacations better. It's just interesting to me. Like I don't know, I'm fascinated by this type of stuff, and you have imparted us with so much information tonight that it's pretty awesome, and I hope our listeners appreciate this because we do have some plans in the future. There's actually one of the guys that works with you was somebody else who was recommended to us who actually goes to the park quite often and is doing a lot of this in the park research, which I think down the road we'd like to have him on to talk about like what's it like to go there for a job and get hassled by security when you're walking around with satellite photos with you. No. But I just find that fascinating because, Teresa and I was actually just talking with producer James about this too, is when we go in August, some part of our trip is going to be dedicated to this podcast. Yeah. So not the entire trip is going to be kind of, I don't want to say under our control, but kind of not in our control because we want to provide stuff to our listeners and cover some things while we're there. So unlike a normal day where we can just do whatever we want and not think about anything, we actually have to think about, we should probably go eat here or go try that or get video of something or get an interview with someone.
Quote unquote work.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting. And, we kind of hit that earlier where I said I'm not too big of a fan of like limitations of things. And I feel like that's going to be something that's part of it too is, okay, we're at D23. We got to take a couple minutes to step over here and talk about what we've seen for the podcast and record that so we can get it out or whatever. Right. So it's not just willy-nilly have fun and have no responsibilities like other trips have been. So I can imagine that working there and going in and having to do data kind of changes your perspective on the park a little bit.
Oh, it certainly does. Yeah. And but one thing we find though with these plans is that it's much more important to organize yourself in the morning when the crowds haven't really flowed in yet. When you get to the afternoon, a lot of the plans look pretty similar, right? So you're visiting, shows and parades and things where the wait time doesn't vary much during the, the peak part of the day. So
right.
When you actually follow the plan, it feels a little bit hectic in the mornings, but when you get to the afternoon, it's actually pretty relaxing because you've done all the, you've gone through all the bottlenecks already. So you can kind of just, flow through the rest of the park. So it isn't maybe as bad as it sounds.
Interesting. Well, during the course of our interview, I have subscribed to touringplans.com because
lovely.
I wanted to click around and look at some stuff. And like we were just talking about, it'd be great for our visit there in August to make sure we can hit up everything. It's definitely going to be useful. Hopefully you'll have some Galaxy's Edge information in there by August.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, we have predictions now, but it's basically, 300 minutes.
Yeah,
all day.
His prediction is you're going to wait forever.
Yeah.
Well, you're saying 300 minutes, and I'm like, I feel like that's low compared to some of the estimates we've heard of literally hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. I feel like they should just, for like the first month they're open, I think it should just stay open 24 hours. Just keep chugging people through. You get the 3 a.m. people, that you can go see it then. Although I guess you have a problem with 24 hours because then how do you keep track of people to buy a one-day ticket, let's say, if it's open for more than a day or something.
Yeah.
But I guess, they've done that with the 24-hour stuff, but I think they end up closing at like 6 or 7 in the morning and then reopen at like 9, so everybody does have to leave for at least a small period of time. But do you guys have numbers and stuff for that stuff, for when they have like the couple times they've had the 24-hour days? Do you guys, or is that just something that's not supported, or?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We have that. We were so excited about the idea that most of us were in the park. That's a great day to do the ultimate touring plan too, when you've got the 24 hours to do it.
That makes sense.
So, yeah, that was the last time that I did one of the ultimate touring plans. Some colleagues and I did it at Walt Disney World, and we had other colleagues that were doing it at Disneyland on the same day when they had that 24-hour.
Wow.
So yeah, but that's one thing that kind of messes up with our database of wait times, and because it was such a weird day in terms of the data, but it was a fun experiment.
I feel like the biggest reason for me that I'd want to have the park open 24 hours is I love, and I think Disneyland really shines, no pun intended, at night. Like, I think the park is just gorgeous at night.
Yeah.
And I feel so unfortunate sometimes when we go, and when I was a kid, they used to be open till 1 a.m., and now they kind of hard cut off at midnight is kind of the latest they ever go. When they're not doing like a 24-hour thing. So it seems like, I'd love to be in the park more at night. Like if I was there on a 24-hour day, I think I would sleep in. I'd go probably start in the afternoon, and then I would stay up as late as possible into the darkness of the park, because it's just gorgeous how they light everything and the atmosphere, especially, you go into like Adventureland and there's all the tiki torches, and Frontierland, you got all the lanterns and stuff. Like, I just love that atmosphere that during the day it's different during the day, but I don't know. I like lighting and stuff. I think it's super cool. So,
oh, I agree. And especially Star Wars stuff. That'd be really cool at night.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Be all lit up, and they're really holding their cards close to their chest on how it's going to work. So I wouldn't put anything past them. You might see something like that where it's open really late. Who knows?
Yeah,
very true.
I feel like they're going to have to. I think maybe they don't plan it in the beginning, but I think that they realize that there's going to be way more demand than supply. And they're going to have to create more supply by being open longer. Maybe you even have a situation where you don't have anything else in the park open except for Galaxy's Edge. You know what I mean? And like people just kind of get funneled back there like over the course of the evening, because then they could still maintain the rest of the park at night and, you know, do their nightly stuff or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and we're actually hearing some anecdotal evidence from travel agents that people who might normally go to Walt Disney World are actually planning summer trips and fall trips to Disneyland because of Galaxy's Edge.
Makes
So,
sense.
you know, it might even be more insane than we're expecting.
Yeah, that's just crazy. All right. Well, our last question is, if you could work at Disneyland, what would you do and why?
I talked at the beginning of the podcast there about my memories of going as a kid, and for some reason, one of the images that's burned into my brain are the parking attendants that greet you when you arrive at Disneyland Park. And back then, of course, it was just Disneyland. So just something about the uniforms and the way they were kind of skipping along, and they were so happy. Like, it's like they were more happy that I was there than I was to be there, you know? And there's just something about being that first contact for a family that arrives at Disneyland that's really appealing to me. So if I was going to work at Disneyland, I'd work in the parking complex. Also because it's, you know, it's just kind of it's a weird answer. Like, who wants to do that job? But to me, it's like, no, I want to show people, you know, the excitement and, you know, the Disney customer service, be the first person that they meet when they, when they come to the park.
Yeah, you're like the first impression for the park.
That's true.
Yeah.
No pressure.
Well, we had somebody on not too long ago who I think they wanted to work on the tram or something. And I was just thinking to myself, like, that's interesting because we've had two people now say something not in the park.
Right, yep.
That's related to parking or shuttling from parking.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so, you know, everybody always thinks of the glamorous stuff inside the park. And sometimes maybe people really like the outside the park thing. But I like your perspective of it. You know, you're the first, you know, you're seeing everybody fresh in the morning and, you know, everybody's excited. Nobody's gotten upset yet, hopefully.
Yeah. And there's something about, too, I've had some really good experiences with the tram drivers. You know, it's the end of a long day and you're just beat and you're going back to the parking lot. And, you know, the guy's cracking jokes or he's making you laugh or he's saying something. Like, wow, like here I am. I think my day's over and I'm still getting that little bit of extra Disney magic. And I just love those little extras.
Now, have you ever been to the parks when they stopped running the trams because there was too many people? Because when I was there a while ago for New Year's, they stopped running the tram. They had signs that said, because of all of the people, it was not safe to run the trams or whatever. So you had to walk back on the tram route. So you're walking where the trams normally drive back to the garage.
I've never heard that.
Now.
That's crazy.
He said the worst time to visit the park, basically, is
Yeah.
exactly when that happened.
Yeah, all bets are off at bets are off at New Year's Eve.
Well, you know, I get it because, you know, they're trying to, you know, think of all the people, right? The park's at capacity probably or close to capacity. And so at night when everybody's trying to leave after midnight, of course, you know, these trams, you know, they only hold so many people and they, you know, even if you're constantly rotating them, there's people that are idiots and they step out in front of the trams and stuff, you know. So I could see that being something that they just don't want to try to deal with that many people. It's just not, you know, the risk to, you know, ratio is not up there.
Yeah.
So, well, Fred, this has been a great conversation.
Yes.
I'm so glad you can make it on the show. Is there anything else you'd like to tell our listeners that we didn't touch on that you want to talk about?
No, other than say that Disneyland's the best part. It's better than Disney World.
Woo!
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So
That's why we chose you,
you
Fred.
say this, and now I have a question. A question. I thought I was done with questions, but since you guys have the data, just looking at Disneyland versus Magic Kingdom, how do they compare since they're basically similar-ish parks when it comes to like wait times and stuff?
Okay, well that's a bit of an unfair comparison because Disneyland has more attractions, quite a bit more, quite a lot more attractions. So
People are shocked to hear that.
I know it is shocking because they don't have the space. But the great thing about Disneyland is the lack of space has made them be so inventive with the way that they design it, right? So Disneyland just feels more intimate because there's so many little corners and little nooks and so many things to explore. So because of the number of attractions, they're better able to spread guests out and kind of process guests through the different attractions. So the wait times typically are lower at Disneyland. Attendance-wise, though, they're pretty similar. Like throughout the year, it's about the same number of guests, so they're fairly similar on an aggregate level.
Interesting.
That is interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah, because I know at the end of the year, I know Magic Kingdom's usually number one on that, like, guesstimation list.
Yeah, but not by much.
Disneyland's number two. Yeah,
it's usually pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
All right, Fred. Well, thanks for joining us. I'm sure our listeners are going to love hearing all this information that you've imparted. Hopefully, you guys will see maybe a little bump in people that are coming and checking out touring plans, even if they don't get a subscription. At least going to the site and taking a look.
Check it out.
The whole thing is just fascinating to me because, like I said before, everyone to some extent is mentally trying to figure this out themselves, whether they realize that they're trying to maximize their time or maybe they don't realize it. I feel like everyone's doing that when they visit the park. But the fact that I can pay less than $10 and input my information and a plan just spits it all out there for me and I can just follow it step by step, that just makes it that much easier.
Yeah, no, our pleasure. No, it was really
amazing.
fun. Yeah, I hope people try it out and let us know how it works.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us.
Oh, super glad to be here. Super fun. Thanks.
Well, did you enjoy listening to this week's episode of DL Weekly? You could support the show for as little as 25 cents an episode. If you want access to the supporter chat like we always talk about, that's only 75 cents an episode. Please consider joining supporters like Taylor G and head on over to dlweekly.net/support. Well, now it's time to return to Vern and Trivia Land to get the answers to the trivia. So, Vern, help us decipher how bad we were this week.
Yes, and hopefully you listeners were a little bit more confident than we were this week.
I hope
this
so.
was a rough one.
So, Honey, I Shrunk the Audience has 3D glasses.
Ooh, I was confident on this one.
Are provided by the sponsor, Kodak.
Oh, you were right.
So Teresa was right in thinking about the film and all that.
Yep.
I was thinking more of the time. I don't know why. And I honestly, this is weird, but I think I actually have more memories of it from when I was a kid at Disney World. I don't know.
Well, they probably sponsored both of them.
Why that? I mean, clearly that was good product placement for them because I remembered it.
All right.
The New Century timepieces on Main Street. Again, Teresa was correct. It was a pharmacy.
No.
Look at that.
I thought I was giving it away with the small town Americana.
Well,
it's everywhere.
that's kind of the only reason I went pharmacy. Not gonna lie, if you didn't give me that hint.
Well, this makes up for the fact when James said, "What is my favorite attraction?" or whatever. Bam. So there you go.
I didn't know
you
I
two
could
are
use that.
you two are getting me back for that one. All right.
All right. The ride that actually did catch fire, and the Imagineers liked the results so much that they worked it into the last scene of Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yep.
Yay, I finally got a point. I'm on the board.
Whoop, whoop.
So in 1966,
I feel like you got this one.
just after the inauguration of New Orleans Square, they opened the Penny Arcade that was known as the Pirate Arcade and Museum.
No.
Yep.
Why do you look so shocked?
Because it was a lucky guess.
Because that was a random, the Pirate Arcade. that was, you said yours, and I was like, yeah, that had to have been it. That makes sense.
No. All right, bonus
Arcade.
question, maybe for a second point.
Oh, dear Lord.
And the first female Imagineer's name was Harriet Burns.
Oh, we were way
I don't
off.
even know if I've ever heard of Harriet
Oh, we're going to
Burns.
have to research Miss Harriet.
Oh, she designed models of the Matterhorn bobsleds. She crafted a model of Sleeping Beauty Castle.
She started with Mickey Mouse Club in 1955.
And models in the final designs of New Orleans Square and the Haunted Mansion. And an exact model of the entire Pirates of the Caribbean dark ride.
Wow.
Wow.
Well, thank you, Miss Harriet, for giving us a lot of our favorites.
Absolutely. Well, if you want to send in some trivia, you can send it in to producer@dlweekly.net, and James and Vern will get copies of that. And we obviously don't, obviously.
Well,
Right?
This week was pure luck. That's all I'm going to say.
Sure. Well, we'll be back next week with more Disneyland news and information.
So until then, go out and enjoy the parks.
Ladies and gentlemen, Disneyland has now ended its normal operating day. We hope you've enjoyed your visit to the Magic Kingdom and that you'll be back with us again soon.